Hello, Colorado. And yes, we have heard from those of you who have written in, especially over the last couple of weeks, about our conversations here at the table. Some of you like what you're hearing from our panelists. Others tell us you disagree with some of what's being said. I guess we're doing our job here on Colorado Inside Out. Our insiders are invited to share their perspectives. I want to hear what they're going to say about certain issues or situations, and I appreciate how everyone here agrees to disagree, which is far and few between these days. The polarizing messaging, the personal attacks, divisive dialogue, and yes, sadly, now the violence, all too present, but also very present. People are trying to get us thinking collectively about solutions. And I have four of those people alongside me this week, so let's get the conversation started. Hi, everyone. I'm Kyle Dyer. Let's get right to introducing you to this week's Insider panel. We start with Patty Calhoun, the founder and editor of Westward, Eric Sondermann, columnist with Colorado Politics and the Denver and Colorado Springs Gazettes, Tyrone Glover, civil rights and criminal defense attorney at Tyrone Glover Law, and Adam Berg, senior policy advisor for Foster Graham, Milstein and Kalischer law firm. Money and what to do with the lack of it is the talk of city governments right now as they prepare their budgets for the next year. Colorado communities are having to look where they can slim things down, but it's Denver that has the steepest hill to climb. Monday night, Mayor Johnston presented his $5.4 billion city budget, saying it's the most conservative budget in 15 years, and that follows already the job cuts that happened earlier this summer. And then our neighbor in Aurora, no layoffs are planned, but residents can expect an increase in fees for services to help with their $20 million deficit. And in Colorado Springs, Colorado's second largest city, cost-cutting measures are also underway, including some cuts, job cuts, and also furloughs to deal with their $31 million shortage. Patty, this is a strategic and difficult time for most Colorado cities.
Right. It's not just the big cities.
No.
The municipalities are having a really tough time. The small towns are having a really tough time. Denver has a unique problem because they've already raised the fees and the service charges that Aurora is now looking at. They can't do that again. They can't charge another sidewalk fee or another trash fee or another residential parking fee. So, but Mike Johnston definitely was limited in what he could do. He's looking for a 5.8 average budget cut across all the departments after he's already had freezes and eliminated jobs, 169 or 71 positions, although one person has just got a restraining order to try to keep her job. Jessica Calhoun is fighting. Everybody is going to be fighting. Every city council person is going to be fighting. Every department chief is going to fight. Some of them will do it behind the scenes. Some will be like clerk and recorder Paul Lopez, who went very public with his concern about this. I personally am most concerned. Parking magistrate office already gone. Our best friend in the early days of Westward, when we had to go beg for all our parking ticket mercies. And that is gone. You're going to have to go to the county court.
Ditto to Patty on the parking magistrate in particular. That was nice and efficient to just be able to do that online, and you either they ruled in your favor, they ruled against you, but it was quick, it was efficient. I guess my overall take, Kyle, is that, these are new and different times in Denver and around cities and throughout the metro area, Front Range, all over the state. It is a new narrative. The state has gotten used over the past 10 or 15 years to a great expansion of population, expansion of budgets, expansion of government services, expansion of programs. And now we have a belt tightening coming. And belt tightenings are painful. Over the long run, you can't be in an expansionary phase indefinitely. You need their market cycles, and in this case, their economic and budgetary cycles. So belt tightenings can be onerous. They're no fun for the people in power. I don't think Mike Johnston ran for mayor with this in mind, but this is the hand he's been dealt, and over the long haul, it might be good for the city.
Okay. Tyrone?
I think what makes this belt tightening unique is, I think, just how drastic in some places it is and how rapid it's happening, and also how ubiquitous it is, not only through our larger cities here in Colorado, but even some of our smaller municipalities. it's something I think that needs to happen, and I applaud our leaders for trying to be creative. But I think the biggest thing is we need to make sure that we don't lose sight of our core democratic functions. There were cuts to ballot boxes, polling stations, community centers, homeless shelters, right? Everyone is taking cuts, those are as well, but we really need to make sure that those particular areas don't suffer, even though we've cut some of those resources.
I think there's a lot of complexity to some of this that we're seeing across the state, because just like our cities, the state budget is also going through a belt tightening. And there's a lot of reason for it. There's decreased sales and use tax, there are property tax issues, there are some federal funding and state funding fluctuations, and just a lot of economic uncertainty. And I think it's a reminder that all politics is local. So when people are looking at national trends and feeling concerned about their spending ability, they spend less in their local cities, and that in turn impacts the city budget. The thing I think that's going to be most interesting is at the same time we got the budget on Monday, we also learned more about Waste No More, which is a measure that was passed several years ago that deals with composting and recycling requirements in the city. They're now looking at an implementation deadline for sometime next year. The question I have is, amidst budget cuts and staffing reductions, how do they plan to go enforce this very large new program? And that's something that the mayor's office is going to have to think about over the next years. Where does enforcement come from in times like this?
You're right. Colorado House Minority Leader Rose Puglisi of El Paso County quit earlier this week, effective immediately, saying that she wanted to be with her children more and free from the toxicity of politics. And recently there was an emotional public blow-up at the end of the special session. Eric, Colorado Republicans have lost 3 prominent leaders over this summer. Things are going to look a lot different and sound a lot different once the session starts in January.
Both minority leaders in the House and Senate have left. Rose Puglisi, topic of this discussion, and earlier this summer, Paul Lundeen. Now, Lundeen left for a different job. Puglisi just sort of threw her hands up, said, I had enough. She was close, by reports, to Charlie Kirk, and I think the emotional aftermath of that took a toll. But there was also events prior to that, around the special session, prior to the Kirk assassination, that I think took a toll on her. I think part of what we're seeing here is it is just no fun being in the minority party and really not having any power. Puglisi talked about the toxic environment, and she is not the first person to talk about that. I think the previous legislative session, we had 2 resignations. They were both from majority Democrats who said, I just can't take this level of toxicity. It's a sad testament to what politics is these days, and I wish there was something to be done about it.
Mm-hmm. Tyrone?
I mean, these vacancies are really unfortunate, and I think, it's a cause for institutional instability. Whether you agree or disagree with Ms. Puglisi or any of the other folks who have ultimately resigned, she represents 75,000 constituents who right now are lacking representation. We have a representative democracy. We send folks, we vote them in, they are representing on our interests, and this sort of shuffling and moving of vacancies, even if it's just for 30 days, is just so destabilizing. And so I just hope that, and I think we'll probably talk about it later, that just the culture, the decorum, the respect for each other can improve so that we can really honor the intent of the people and have the people that we vote in and have there representing us.
Right. Adam?
These things happen. They've happened with Lundeen and Puglisi. We saw Armagost, who's been the center of a lot of attention, also resign. We saw Tracy Burnett, Adrian Benavidez, in previous years, Dan Pabon, John Kafalis. So there is this churn, and it does feel like it's now more common. I think the issue, as has been stated, with the vacancy process is we are now allowing county parties, which tend to be very solidified and made up of a small group of people, determining then who the next representative is. It can also lead to sometimes more extreme candidates then being placed into office who may not win through a general election process. And I think it's added to the vitriol and the hostility under the Gold Dome. It's just sad to see people who go into office and then choose that because of the culture of it, that they don't want to serve anymore.
We have to remember that we have term limited these state legislators too. So you have this situation where the only institutional memory now at the state capitol are lobbyists and Marianne Goodland and a few other journalists. So it's really easy, I think, to manipulate a lot of the newbies because they don't have the memory. They don't know what happened before. They don't know what compromises were made. They might not even know where the bodies were buried. And it takes really knowing what's gone on before to really parse through all the proposals that come up. So that's disappointing. As for the toxicity, it is not just the State House, and that's the issue. It is spilling all over the Capitol, the media, and I know we're going to talk more about that. In her case, I truly think when she said she wanted to go back, she'd moved to take this, to run for this seat, wants to go back to the Western Slope with her kids. This week, you believe it.
This week, Colorado high school students have walked out of class and raised their voices against gun violence following last week's shooting at Evergreen High School. And they have not gotten in trouble for the walkouts. As one school district recognized, they're expressing their opinions for a matter important to them. Yet also this week, there is a much larger debate beyond gun violence in schools, and that is what constitutes free speech, which is protected by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. We have seen people losing their jobs, other people calling for people to lose their jobs, and we saw on Wednesday that Jimmy Kimmel's show on ABC has been taken off the air because of comments he made following the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Tyrone, I'm very glad you were here this week as our civil rights attorney. What is free speech? What is protected? What is going on?
Well, I think where you started, right, is a lot of where our free speech and First Amendment precedent is. It's the protest, it's the walkouts, it's the demonstration. Protests, airing your grievances about the government, that is actually also protected under the First Amendment, and it's part of the free speech doctrine. Where we're sort of dealing right now is in the employment context, right? And your employment handbook is not the Bill of Rights. And so you don't necessarily have those same rights as you might if you're in a public forum protesting a war or gun violence or a bill or something that was just recently passed. When you sort of move into the city and state folks, then it starts to get a little bit grayer, right? You have to look at whether your speech is disrupting workplace efficiency. And when you have an administration that is willing to sort of get involved in these spats, and you also have social media that can kind of take on a mind of its own, whether that's disrupting workplace efficiency starts to be a bit more gray and a bit of a more murky test there. But the actions in the places where people are being harmed is in this sort of quasi-public and private space.
Yeah. Adam, your thoughts on this?
It was interesting. The Daily yesterday talked about how Vice President Vance and his conversations around going after left-leaning institutions. There was a time under the Obama administration where the Treasury actually went after Tea Party organizations and their sort of financial, political leanings. Not under the approval of Obama. He actually was vocal about his disagreement with it, but there's some form of sort of this sense of retribution for what had started on one side and now is trickling into the other. But I think what was raised is the really interesting point, which is the core tension around freedom of speech between constitutional protection from a government in terms of censorship, and we could talk about Jimmy Kimmel and what's going on, versus the consequences of an employment agreement in which you violate some kind of standard that the employer has set. I think it's a very complicated but important conversation to be having.
Patty.
I want to return to Evergreen for a little bit. So if you compare this to Columbine, and it's impossible not to, I mean, the shooter in Evergreen was wearing a T-shirt that echoed one Dylan Klebold had worn. The Jefferson County Sheriff's Office, the difference in how we're seeing them respond and talk about freedom of access to information compared to 26 years ago, they've been far more forthcoming. We know a lot more from the lessons of Columbine about shootings happen fast, you have to go in. That did sound like what happened in Evergreen once they actually got people on site. We're also finding out that there weren't people on site. We're learning that there actually were websites, there were hints that something was going to go on, but they didn't know who it was or where it was. But the FBI is beginning to study the internet so much more than it used to happen. So we've learned some lessons, which is bullying is largely responsible for setting off school shooters, but now the bullying is being done in cyberspace, which makes it so much harder to find.
I'm going to go back to the broader issue, not Evergreen specifically. Neither the left or the right in this country has covered themselves in a lot of glory since the Charlie Kirk assassination 9 or 10 days ago. From Vice President Vance to President Trump on down through the MAGA ranks, it seems like they are taking this almost opportunistically as a chance to go after their enemies and to repress the speech of their enemies. The irony in that is that one of the bigger advocates for free speech was Charlie Kirk. And he was clear on how even obnoxious, atrocious, I think he used the word gross speech, is still protected speech under the First Amendment. So were he alive today, as he ought to be, he would be opposed to a lot of what is being done in his name. Now, the left obviously has its own track record over recent years with a lot of what has gone on campuses around the country, and the whole notion of, instead of disagreeing with speech, trying to shut it down. And that is wrong. It is antithetical to our principles as a country, and that is the case whether that speech is on the left or the right, and whether that repression is on the left or the right.
Okay. You know, over the last few weeks, we have received some pretty vocal feedback from viewers saying certain panelists are too left-leaning and others are too conservative, and wishing that they not return to the show. Well, we all want things to be better, and we all have different ideas on how to get there. And at CIO, we want to encourage people to listen to one another, to those different ideas. If you check out other panel discussion shows, they are screaming matches, and we are not going to go there. This show has proved on and on that we can have successful, thoughtful conversation that is respectful. Now, am I too naive or vanilla, or are we as a show to think that we can continue this way? I think that's what CIO has been founded on over all the years you've been on, for 30 plus years. But the rest of society seems to want screaming, and we have to refocus on listening.
I think I appreciate this topic being on. I think all of us who work in this space and have the opportunity to share our thoughts feel a lot of this, and we see a lot of it across social media and beyond. And I think people in this day and age have a tendency to seek out the sources that will confirm their beliefs. And they have options. They have more options now than they've ever had, whether it is a podcast hosted by someone in their basement or a media program produced in a studio. And I think we become increasingly unwilling to accept or analyze the fact that we may be wrong. And something I've been thinking about quite a bit is, all of our worldviews are shaped by the experiences which led us to today, or wherever we are at the time. And much of my view of the state of affairs is based upon the fact of where I was raised and who my parents were and where I went to school and my career. And the question to me is, are we capable of being empathetic to people whose worldviews are different than our own? And recognizing that while we may not agree, we can at least appreciate the fact that they have a different opinion than we do, and then begin a civil conversation from there. So it's a hard time to be optimistic, but I think it's what we need to talk about.
Okay, Patty.
Let me travel back in time even further than Columbine. In 1983, Alan Berg, a popular radio talk show host on KOA, unexpectedly popular, very liberal, very loud-spoken, was gunned down in Denver. He was killed by white supremacists. It's not all that different now than it used to be. Anyone who speaks their mind might be in danger. You're in danger of your job. You're in danger, people are out there looking to get you in a lot of ways. But the difference is, while we have more access to information, which can show us how other people live, we could become more broad-minded. We've also got more access to people who might think in that same little narrow way that we want to think and will encourage us. But I have to remember, Alan Berg was a very similar situation, except it was completely flipped. The difference is how the media has changed. And I'm not talking about the news networks. I'm talking about the access to the internet and how quickly things can blow up.
Mm-hmm. Eric.
Well, good for Patty for bringing some historical context to this. I think what is different is back in the 80s when Alan Berg was killed, it was so out of context that made it so shocking. Today, it is much more in context. I think we are living through a particularly frightening moment. It's not the first frightening moment in this country, but it is a highly frightening moment. And we have to be able to figure out some way to coexist with each other. The idea of splitting this country up, or Marjorie Taylor Greene proposed last week, divorcing into blue America and red America, that is not going to happen, and the consequences of it happening would be horrific to even contemplate. I'm proud to have been for many, many years a part of this show where we do have civil dialogue. I write a column under the tag of Down the Middle. Now that doesn't mean I don't have strong opinions or that I'm mushy or milquetoast. It just means that I try to respect different sides of the argument, and I try to engage in that argument in a civil manner. We're living in a frightening time. We so quickly run to our political corners whenever anything happens. And we don't, as Adam articulately pointed out, we don't have empathy for those of a different viewpoint. That is what's missing.
All right, and Tyrone.
We have to protect the places like this show where we have civil discourse, where we have respectful dialogue, where decorum matters, where the way we treat our fellow panelists and the viewership matters. I can remember early in my career as a trial lawyer trying countless cases where if the two sides met each other on the street, they would come to blows or worse. But because they believed in our system of justice, because we had form, decorum, respect, they would show up each and every day, sit on their opposite sides of the courtroom for sometimes weeks at a time, and allow the sorts of processes that happen in a democratic society and a free society to play out. And so I think protecting those spaces in the way that you have, with the way that the folks here have, is just really incumbent upon us, and really kind of the only way that we come back from such divides.
Mm-hmm. So we carry on. Thank you all. Let's go down the line now and share some of the highs and lows of the week. We start on a low note so that we can please end on a happy note. Patty, are you negative?
As soon as the show is over, run out and go to Civic Center Park while you still can. It's going to be the night market. It's celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month, but soon it will lock down for renovations that I think maybe could be postponed and save that $30 million when the city's in so much trouble. But unless I win that campaign, go out and enjoy it now.
Because the construction's starting when?
It will start this fall.
Okay, all right. Eric.
I'm going to stick with the topic du jour, the Kirk assassination, which is still quite recent, and the reactions of bad partisan actors on both sides. On the left, there was, on social media, which can be so toxic, there was, if not a celebration, almost feigning sympathy and a lot of allegations that he had it coming, he got his just desserts. Completely disgusting stuff. But among Charlie Kirk's own crowd on the political right, too many are using this as almost an opportunity for a McCarthy-esque crackdown on free speech. Neither one does him the honor that he deserves, and shame on all involved.
Okay, and Tyrone.
I'm going to go a little bit lighter. Due to work obligations, Pam Grier is no longer going to attend the East Film Fest. I saw this as my opportunity to finally meet the great Pam Grier, who I've been a fan of for many years. The event's still going to go on. I implore everyone to attend, but I'm kind of bummed. It's on the bucket list. It will happen, but not at this fest.
I think, to echo Eric, it's hard to pick just one, which means it's been a really tough week, 2 weeks for all of us. And I just think it feels really heavy and overwhelming to a lot of people right now to be either working in politics or law or wherever else, and then just even be tuning in. I think a lot of us are drained from staring at our phones and waiting for the next story to come out. So just would encourage everyone to take a breath, take a break. We're getting right into the weekend, and try and unplug.
Okay, all right. And something good, Patty.
Okay, I found something pretty. Wasn't easy. Robert Redford. Going to miss him, but one of the really fascinating stories that came out this week is that he tried to bring the equivalent of Sundance here 50 years ago when he was at the peak of his stardom. and he met with Stan Brakhage and Dick Lamb, and it just couldn't work. Well, now he at least is leaving Boulder Sundance.
Yes, not this winter, but the following.
2027, we'll have the first Sundance in Colorado.
That was sad to see him go. Eric?
Well, as I've said, there were plenty of bad actors in the aftermath of the Kirk assassination, but there were also some very good actors. And one of them was the governor of Utah, Spencer Cox, who more than acquitted himself. He did things right, whether it was in terms of informing the public of what was going on and the investigation, or more broadly, as a conservative Republican, appealing to people's better angels, appealing for rationality and calm and civility across the country. That's who he is. That's who he has been before this incident. It's who he continues to be. Utah is well served.
Tyrone?
And to that similar end, if we want to turn over a new leaf and take a new direction, literally that is about to start happening, right? We're starting to feel that cooler weather. The temperatures are dropping at night. Leaf season is starting. It's going to, I think, kind of start making its way into all of the places we like to visit during the fall. I'm starting to see the Oktoberfest events starting to percolate. So maybe with the new season and new direction, we can get some new, more unifying energy in this community.
I'm manifesting the aspens
Yes.
today, right? Adam?
I'm going to end with the best news, which is personal news, which is I got married a couple weeks ago, which has just been so much joy. Honestly, the time where I needed it. The wedding was a great celebration for everyone, but just a shout out to my now wife, Jill, and excited to be back and right back into work. It's like I never left.
But it's different now.
It is
Mr.
different
and
now.
Mrs., congratulations.
Thank you.
My high is I am headed back to Maryland this weekend to be with family, and I am eager to unplug, as Adam suggested, and just be Carol's daughter, Josie's mom, Greg's little sister, and Christine's aunt. And I'm really excited to have a good crab cake. Can't wait, but I will come back, don't worry. Thanks, Insiders, for joining us this week and for your thoughtful discussion and for the good listening to one another. Thank you for listening to our show, either on television, on your computer, on your podcast. I'm Kyle Dyer. I will see you next week here on PBS 12.
PBS 12 believes in the power of original, local programming. Help us bring more shows, like the one you just watched, by donating at pbs12.org/program support today.